So one of the things I was curious to hear your opinion on as we're talking about the Doctor, the regenerate. David Tennant's back. We don't know what he is,
Yeah.
what version of the Doctor he is, but we know Ncuti Gatwa is coming. We know the 14th
Yes.
Doctor is coming. How we get there is unclear.
Yeah.
Do you have any concern that them bringing back such a big version of the Doctor, arguably the most popular Doctor of the modern Doctors, is going to kind of lessen the impact of a new Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa? It's almost like, oh, you gave us the best one right before. It's like when people say, oh,
Yeah.
you made me, I have to go on stage after that.
Right.
It's kind of that way. You have David Tennant. If he comes in and does a special or two or three, who knows what's happening, but we know he's in at least one.
Yeah.
And everyone loves it. And then suddenly you're handing us a new untested version of the Doctor.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to do a bit of a disservice, maybe.
I mean, that's a good point, right? Like that's a valid concern. The one thing though that I think kind of lessens my concern is that area is that I have no doubt that number one, Tennant is going to be super gracious in the handing of the baton. Like I could see, we've already had one goodbye moment with Tennant, right? Like where I don't want to go, all that. I could see them writing it in such a way where like it flips it on its head, and like a very gracious handoff from Tennant to Gatwa. Like make the transition something super special, something super heartfelt, so that you have there's no way for us as the audience to be anything but like, yes, like this is the Doctor now. Like have some way that it's written where it's like, I'm ready. And then it goes to Ncuti Gatwa. Also, just based on Davy's excitement, based on Gatwa's excitement, I feel like this regeneration, whatever happens with Gatwa, it's probably going to suck all the air out of the room, and we're going to absolutely love it. Maybe that's not the right way to say it. Sucking the air out of the room is a bad thing, right? Like it's gonna breathe life into the character, right? Like I'm trying to think of a regeneration that it was like that. And I can't think of one, but I don't know. The way I envision it, I don't have any concerns. Number one, because Tennant's the Doctor. He's going to hand it off. It's going to be super gracious. Gatwa, I think based on what I've seen, he has enough of a presence that he's going to be able to carry himself. And number three, Davies is writing it. Whatever we might think about what some of the things he's done, he's an incredibly talented writer. Some of the stuff that he even wrote during the pandemic shutdown, 5-minute episode of like Tennant talking to the cat lady, the nurse. And it was just like, it floored me. Like he is a talented writer. I can't expect anything but it going over well. Anyways, I'll stop. I'm assuming you have concerns.
No, I mean, you sound like you're just like all in, which is interesting because I'm like, man, I hope he's not setting himself up for, because if even like think about Smith going to Capaldi.
Yeah.
Smith's run was amazing. Everybody loved him. One of the most popular, probably I would say he's neck and neck with David Tennant as the most popular Doctor of the modern era. And moving off to Capaldi, seasoned actor, everybody was on board, for the most part with him coming in. I felt the transition was weird. I didn't love the regeneration. There was some things about it that were good, but it wasn't one of those things where, like you said, oh, wow, they just really nailed it. Like I didn't have that feeling, Clara's there,
right.
They had like a quick switch, he kind of pops up and he's all of a sudden Capaldi, and it was almost shocking. He had a nice little send off, but there could be criticisms around that transition. So I kind of always set my expectations low when it comes to these, because you just don't know what they're going to do, and they do seem to want to do something different. It seems like kind of the trend is like, oh, what can I do different that hasn't happened during a regeneration before?
Okay, but Okay, so Smith to Capaldi. Okay, I'll concede that, right? Tennant to Smith, though. Like
Was solid. Yeah.
that regeneration. Again, we have Tennant, who both of us thoroughly enjoyed his character. It was gut-wrenching to watch him leave the show, right? The way that he went out, knowing that it was his final, at the time, it was his final episode, right? Smith, unknown quantity, don't really know who he is. But the way that that first episode plays out, it was fantastic, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like
yeah,
it was incredible. He carried it from that point forward. 11th hour, such a good episode.
Moffat written.
Moffat written.
Yeah. So what do we have to compare? So Davies would be Eccleston to Tennant. That's the only transition he's written.
Another solid one.
And I thought, yeah, they did that one well. And you had said you hope they don't do the same thing where it's kind of like the companion is like, oh, I'm not sure of this new guy. You're not the right person, kind of thing. So you're hoping they don't do that. So they're going to have to do something different, I think, to make you happy.
Well, I think like we've talked about it before. Clean break. Dan and Yaz are out. Where whatever might be happening with Rose, whether she's a companion, whether she's a one-time character, I think that transition from Tennant to Gatwa, if Rose stays on, she's not going to have a lot of experience with Tennant as a doctor.
Right.
So it's not going to be.
There's no emotional connection.
There's really. No emotional connection. And so to have Gatwa show up at that point, if she is the companion, I think it is still a clean break. I don't think there's anything established there. But
right. And I will say, if I'm making a prediction, I think they're introducing her with Tennant and Tate, and she's gonna continue on as a regular, because the way even her quote, about seeing the rose bloom, that it's implying that there is going to be growth for this character.
Right. The rose does not blossom in a single episode.
Right. Exactly. So I think that even that kind of little hint, and even the way Davies, I think, has referred, kind of saying, I can't wait for people to kind of get to know this character and all this stuff. So the casting does seem like that's more than just a one-off thing. So my expectation is that she will be kind of the main companion to Ncuti Gatwa's doctor.
Yeah.
Which will be an interesting dynamic, because they are both very young.
Yeah.
Usually you kind of have, older, the doctor's a bit older with a young companion, or we've had a lot of different combinations. This seems to be maybe the youngest duo but who knows, they might be introducing other, companions too. So she might not be the only one, but it is going to be a young cast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we say that, but Gatwa's like 30, right? That's
true. I think
he just looks incredibly young.
That is, you're right. I'm not giving him enough credit as that he's not as young as I'm making it sound. I think it's because I watch the Netflix shows and I'm watching them both play teenagers.
Right.
I mean, literally, the shows they're not like in the same universe, but if they were, and these characters are going to the same high school, they'd probably be in the same class. Like that's how close they are in age from a presentation, perspective in the shows that they've been in. Now, I don't know. Do you have her age? Do you know how old she is?
I read somewhere, and
24 or something, maybe.
I read somewhere where when she started doing Heartstoppers. So like when she was cast for Heartstoppers, she was like 17.
Oh, wow. So she
still
might
be
like
just
early
be
20s.
18, 19. Yeah.
Wow.
That's
So it's going to be kind of like the way it was because when Rose joined, the original Rose, when she joined the doctor, she kind of came across as a teenager. Now she wasn't in high school or anything.
Right.
She was kind of working a regular job. So I think the implication that she was in her early 20s, but she was definitely super young. We've never had a teenager companion.
Yazmin Finney is 18.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
it's still a big difference. Even though they both played teenagers in the shows, she's 11 years younger than him. So they could, like I said, last time we were talking about him, I hope they do age him up. I hope they do have him play his age and just have him play, a 30-year-old, as opposed to trying to have him play super young the way he did in the other show.
I could imagine, like, if, just playing out the scenario, if Whitaker regenerates into Tennant, and the whole idea is because the doctor is now dealing with stuff, right? And Tennant regenerating to Tennant, like Capaldi said, having a similar face is to remind him of who he is and what he does. And then to have a doctor who's dealing with stuff regenerate into Gatwa. Gatwa looks super young, but plays a older, jaded, going through stuff doctor.
That would be so unexpected.
It would be so unexpected
because he's only really known for one role, and the interviews I've seen him in, he's a very exuberant, outgoing person, and to have him play a more toned down kind of, I don't know if that's where they're going with it.
That's probably not where they're going.
I don't know that you cast him to play that. I think you cast him because of the charisma he comes with.
Yeah.
And so I'm imagining maybe a little bit more of a, kind of in your face kind of, I used to complain about Smith. He's a little clowny, like that is a characteristic of the Doctor for sure. Every version of the Doctor that I've seen has that come out at some point. Maybe not the first Doctor, but the other Doctors since have always kind of had some silliness to them. So I'm expecting this guy to have some silliness.
That's my daughter was just looking at pictures. I was showing her pictures of the Doctors, and she pointed to the War Doctor, and she's like, "Who's that, Dad?" And I told her, "Oh, that's the War Doctor. What's his personality?" Well, he was grumpier and more toned down, and he looked at these two, pointing at Tennant and Smith, and being like, they were a little much for him. It's like he was the only one that didn't have the goofiness that would come out.
That's true, and I don't really count him when I think of like the Doctors. I don't, officially he is, but because if you really think about it, the Fugitive Doctor is kind of the same way.
Oh yeah, the Fugitive Doctor.
She doesn't mess around. So these offshoot versions tend to be a little bit different, but